The first wife was Margaret Livingston. We've asked Delila Williams, a great-granddaughter of Margaret Livingston, to give the summary of her life.
I feel honored today to give a little of the life of my great-grandmother, Margaret Livingston Gardner. I never knew her during life, but I feel like I loved her, and I still love her. Margaret Livingston Gardner was born October the 12th, 1818, in Loch Gilphead, Argyllshire. Her parents were Neil Livingston and Janet McNair. The family emigrated to America in the first quarter of the 19th century in a sailing vessel and landed at Quebec November the 20th, 1820. Beside the parents, there were three little girls, Sarah, Mary, and Margaret. Margaret was 2 years old. The family made haste to a hotel, and there during the night, a fourth girl, Janet, was born. When the mother was strong enough, the family moved into a log cabin in the backwoods of Canada, where later four boys, Neil, John, Duncan, and Dougal, were added to the family. The father had cut down trees, hewed logs, and built their first home with his own hands. He struggled for a few years, tilling the soil, but it was a poor living he eked out. And thinking to improve their condition, he left to find work. He was never heard of again. With the breadwinner gone, life was hard. As soon as the girls were old enough to help, they went to Detroit, Michigan, to seek work. Sarah, the oldest, obtained a job as a dressmaker, and Mary as a serving maid. All the money was given to support the family. Even the visits home were made on foot. As soon as Margaret and Janet were old enough, Margaret worked as a lady's maid, and Janet as a helper in the kitchen. In the year 1836, Archibald Gardner, a young Scotchman, built a gristmill in Broome, Canada. While cutting a road through the timber to a sawmill, he met Margaret, and it was a case of love at first sight. When he got his mill started, he sent to Detroit for her, a distance of 100 miles, and they were married February the 19th, 1839, in Brooke Township, Canada. They made their first home near the mill. Life held promise. In the home, her oldest son, Robert, was born February the 1st, 1840. A better home was built, and here her children, her son Neil was born, and here Archibald died, October the 10th, 1844, age 18 months, died of bowel trouble. The gospel was brought to Canada by John Borman. The Gardner brothers, with their wives, mother, and sister, accepted it. Margaret and Janet were the only ones of the Livingston family ever to join the church. They left Canada in 1846. In June 1847, they began the long trek across the plains. Margaret drove a pan of mares all the way, even over Big Mountain. They arrived in the valley on October the 1st, 1847, camped in the old fort, and here, 5 days later, her daughter Margaret was born. October the 6th, 1847. A wagon tongue, which had been lifted off the running gears and made secure nearer the ground, served as her hospital. In the spring of 1848, they moved to Mill Creek, where the rest of their family, namely Sarah, Mary Ellen, Rachel Maria, and Delila, were born. It was here she passed through the greatest trial of her faith. Her husband contemplated plural marriage, but she did not believe in it. In accordance with counsel, Archie wanted to marry another woman, but he would not without his wife's consent. She would not do this, and she was determined she wouldn't. I have gone through so much for the gospel, but this is the last straw. I will not give up my husband. For weeks she kept her word. Then it was the practice of the president to travel to the different wards to the Sunday meetings. Her husband told Brigham Young about his wife's unwillingness to live polygamy. President Young went to their home and had a long talk with her. He told her he felt the same way about it when the commandment first was given. But because he believed so strongly and knew it was a commandment of the Lord, he was willing to abide by it. She finally gave her consent because she believed so firmly in the gospel. She was one of the many women who were called upon to do this, and she bore it in a wondrous manner. She would never allow her children to say anything against any of their father's wives, and was very unselfish in her attitude toward them. You might say she was a perfect polygamous wife. So much did she believe in its being right after her conviction. She lived to see the gulls destroy the crickets that threatened their crops and acknowledged the hand of the Lord in sparing the crops. It was in 1883 that dread paralysis first touched her. Gradually, she became unable to walk, was deprived of her speech, and during the last years of her life was entirely helpless. Kind hands and loving hearts cared for her. She died in West Jordan, Utah, September the 21st, 1893, and is buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery among her loved ones. She was a lovely, gentle soul, kindly, generous, a faithful follower of the lowly Nazarene. It's up to us to be true to the faith which her parents have cherished, true to the truth for which martyrs have perished, to God's command, soul, heart, and hand. Faithful and true may we ever stand.